Today, in our interviewing the experts sections, we're going to talk to Anand Iyer, who's actually someone I know quite well, very experienced in the Workday world, and we're going to talk about several things, no less the Workday Release 1 that's coming up, I believe, around March time. For those that don't know me, I'm Nick Donovan. I'm one of the directors at Focus Cloud. We're doing Workday specific recruiting now since 2015, and I've been here since 2017 at Focus Cloud. And I'll pass you over to Anand to introduce himself.
Thank you, Nick. Pleasure to be here. Briefly, I have been in the Workday ecosystem for about a dozen years now, and I've seen a handful of different industries during that window of time. And the interesting thing is, you mentioned R1, and when I first joined the Workday ecosystem back in 2012, the number of releases per year were 3. And
did not know that.
So 2 to 3 years in, it changed to being 2 per year every 6 months. So it's an interesting change there that made a lot of difference. It came about because of a request from the client groups asking for less change during a calendar year, simply because of other priorities that we all have, projects and year-end activities and merit and performance and things like that. Anyway, so long story short, 12 years in the ecosystem. I've managed HRIS, HR operations globally for several large organizations, and currently here with you talking
things through about the release. I've got some questions for you actually around this release stuff. So obviously, as recruiters, we're not necessarily experts in what goes on a customer site in terms of the business processes and the intricacies of Workday. We're aware that 2 releases come out a year. We get to look at some of the bullet points that come out, and we have discussions around them, but we're not experts in that area. As a company that has Workday, when these releases come out, am I right in thinking you're not obliged to take any of the updates? You don't have to implement them all, do you? It's voluntary for you, right? Or is there any that they say, no, you have to have this, otherwise it's not going to work?
Good question. There are some that are automatic updates, meaning they are mandatory. Workday will push them through whether you like it or not. You better be ready and be tested and ready for it. And there are others that are opt-in items, so you can choose to implement those. Ideally, what you're doing is, Workday typically gives you a 4-week window prior to the releases being available in the production environment. When you have that 4-week window in the preview sandbox, that's where they release the updates 4 weeks ahead of the production release. And you have that 4-week window to actually go in and test everything out. You can actually try it out and see how it is. Have your end users get in there, work with you to see if it's something that you want to use or not, if it's an opt-in item. But if it's an automatic update item, you want to make sure that you test it thoroughly, back to back and regression testing, etc., to make sure that nothing in that automatic update will trip you up in your current implementation state.
And do you, as a customer, is this all stuff that you'll do internally, or will you engage one of the partners to help you or advise you around what you need to change or take up, or will you at that stage get a short-term interim person involved to do the changes, or does that vary from customer to customer?
It does vary from customer to customer, but the ideal situation is what I'd like to describe to you. And companies can decide what may work for them or not, depending on resource constraints that may have an impact on the decision. So typically, what happens is you want a well-balanced team that has a mix of core HCM skills, security, and any component that you've implemented within the HCM scope, right? Which is benefits, talent management, and compensation. These are the typical key ones, right? the big ones. And then if you have advanced comp, which is year-end merit processing in the system, that takes a little additional level of knowledge and skill. But besides that, you're looking at integrations and then reporting, right?
Yeah.
If you have these fundamental skill sets in your team for HCM, you're good to go, right? Yeah. That said, you want to also have end users who are core HR users and some managers on standby to be able to test a few things. If you don't have a testing automated testing tool such as Kainos Smart Test, for instance, you probably want to be well staffed for these two update windows that Workday offer, which is typically the preview sandbox is updated with the releases in February, early February, typically once, and then for the R2, it's in August. Yeah. And then the production releases happen in March and in September, typically, right? So you want to have a core team of HRIS personnel who will review the notes, who will analyze the results, see what's going to be implemented in your tenant as an impactful implementation in your tenant, whether it's automatic or opt-in, like we talked about earlier, right?
Yeah.
So if it's automatic, then you really want to test it upfront. And if it's opt-in, you can take some time to get to it. You don't have to rush the testing for those opt-in items within that 4-week window that Workday gives you before releasing it in production, right? So it's available then for you to choose to test later, even after the release is in production. It means that it's not turned on for your tenant. You have to choose to turn it on. So you have between then and the next release a good few months to figure out whether or not you want that opt-in item. So I would say a handful of team members is what it takes.
Yeah.
It just depends on the organization and the size of the implementation, the scope. If you have many variations in business processes and things like that, and let's say there are a couple of business process impact items being released, you probably want to have more people testing that. Yeah. But if you have so if you have an automated testing tool like Kainos Smart Test, for instance, then I've used that. It doesn't take a whole lot of manpower. It really replaces that effort. There's a significant effort involved in writing out the test scripts, making sure you understand the release items well enough to write the test scripts, and then actually test it out and make sure you educate your end users about what this is all about, and then have them test it and give you the results so that there's a bit of a mix of users testing it, so you don't miss out anything, right? And then at the end, you decide whether or not everything's fine. If not, you look at remediation efforts and so on. But with Kainos type solution, you go away Friday evening, on Saturday when the release is available in the tenant, you come back Monday. During that small weekend window, the solution actually automatically tests everything based on the test packs you've implemented.
Yeah.
Right. With the Smart Test solution.
That's the Kainos Smart tool, right?
Correct. That's the one I have in mind when I say yes.
Yeah.
And that's the one I've used. So and really when you come back on Monday morning, you actually have test results ready for you within the system. It actually has check marks, on items that tested fine, and highlighted red items for things that need additional attention from the team.
Yeah.
So that really takes a whole lot of the guesswork and the effort involved in testing, at least.
Yeah. Sounds like a good tool. Am I right in thinking that Workday themselves use that?
Actually, Workday, I don't know if they currently still use it, but I know for a fact that they definitely used it in the past, and I believe they still do for their own internal testing purposes. So that was Kainos' big sell, if you will, back in the day. Yeah, when they were still a young organization. They're fairly well established now, and Kainos' solution for testing Workday releases is pretty much standard, if you will, now.
Yeah. That brings us on then. Excuse me. To these release notes. Was there any big takeaways for you in terms of things that stand out
Yeah, for R1 2024, looking at the release notes very briefly, there are a few things that stood out for me. There is an update that's coming on the mass operation, action. So really, the number of transactions you can process in a mass operation has increased to 200,000, which is a good deal because it used to be pretty restrictive. I remember once having to mass update, and it was a bit of a pain, if you will, about a decade ago. But now, with all the changes that have happened over the years and this new release that's coming out, that's going to aid the HRIS teams in the client world to a great degree in supporting the business operations, right? That's one. And then you can configure a delay in your notification to on all business processes. That's a good one. You probably want certain transactions to be top of your inbox for the person on whom it's awaiting action. When they come in on Monday, for instance, so you may be able to delay it over the weekend. I'm guessing because I haven't read the details on this one, but that's what it seems like. So that seems like a very good one. And there are additional features, globalization features in terms of local time zone processing. There are another really cool feature that I think will be welcomed by the talent acquisition world is the ability to regenerate an employment agreement document. Yeah. So that's a much needed and well sought after change for the talent acquisition world. Yeah. And there are a few good changes in the staffing side. Ability to configure optional fields in a job profile. And another interesting one is the object transporter change. A key item there that stood out for me, at least, is the ability to manage reporting and analytics related changes in the tenant setup. So that's a good one. The entire analytics and reporting world will be happy with that. Yeah, I know I would be, right? There are a few items that are setup required. The ones that I just talked about are all automatic pushes, so it's going to be there.
But you get those whether you want them or not. They're automatically done by Workday, right?
Correct. So yeah, they'll show up in the tenant, and it'll be available, and you can use it, right? So there are opt-in items as well that are some standout items. Time off and leave has some interesting updates that are coming out, and that's available both for desktop and mobile, I believe. And core compensation, configurable optional fields are being added. There's also an interesting change. The configurable grid for advanced compensation. Now you can have multiple grid configurations, which is a great deal. So if you have different types of populations you want to treat differently and use different grids for, that now becomes an option. So that's a great change, right? And so
these updates that come out basically is to make it more user friendly, right? To make improvements that save time. Yeah, and in the main, I'm assuming they work. Has there ever been in your experience updates have come out and you've gone, oh no, why do we do that?
Well, there have been a few changes that have given pause, but in the overall scheme of things, when you look at it holistically, every update has been an important piece in the transition of Workday from where it was to where it is today. So it's always been progression in that sense. Yeah. Another cool feature in this upcoming update is called Workday Docs for layouts. That'll help replace BERT reports, which is a bit of a difficult thing to maintain and manage for in-house teams very often.
Yeah, that's one of the things we hear that, Anand, when we're talking to candidates and they say they're reporting specialists and we ask, okay, have you done BERT reports? Because as we understand it, that's one of the most complex ones to do, right? That's one of the most difficult. and a lot are not massively comfortable with BERT reports. So if it's been replaced and with something that's maybe a little bit easier, that would certainly help, I think.
No, it's kind of cool that it becomes, for instance, your annual merit statements can now be built using that. You can literally use that for performance and talent management work as well. The layouts, managing layouts and changing them and adding charts and details that you want in there becomes so much more flexible because of this option. So while BERT report option might remain, this becomes a hugely popular option because the typical high-end power user, if you will, may even be able to do this rather than just the HRIS or HR technology teams, right?
Yeah.
So it's a definite step in the right direction.
Yeah. So, one of the things that I don't think we discussed it leading up to this, but one of the things I'm actually interested in, not just within Workday, but in general, is artificial intelligence. Workday have just acquired a company it's AI based. What's your thoughts on that within Workday, within the business world?
As with anything new, like there's positives and negatives and early stage teething issues that one needs to deal with. And adoption varies, right? So there are early adopters, as with any technology, and people that are skeptical upfront and then wait to see how others fare with their adoption before going after it. So that said, Workday's doing everything they can to make the solutions friendly in terms of adopting machine language and artificial intelligence capabilities, right? So I for one think that is the way to go, as long as as with anything, it's a double-edged sword, right? So we have to look at the positives first. We also need to understand what the possible negatives can be. It may not always serve an organization in the best way possible, but it just comes down to how it is adopted within the Workday's core offering, and what options the end clients have in terms of either taking or leaving out, filtering out logically based on their current organization's setup and needs, right? That's really what it'll come down to. Where I'm seeing the highest value immediately is in the staffing space. Talent acquisition, talent management space. There's an obvious immediate advantage that can be had. But also within, for instance, Workday Help might be a great place, right? Workday Help is offering that AI might play and ML may play a very important role. Yeah. And that's really what it comes down to, seeing which aspects of Workday, which SKUs of Workday carry how much of AI and ML capabilities, and what makes sense for an organization in their current stage of growth or transformation within the HR function, so that it serves them the best. So it's a tricky question, but I've answered it the best way I can at this point in time. If you ask me, where am I? I'm definitely not on the fence. I'm definitely in favor of adopting, but meaningfully adopting.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see where it all at in 10, 15 years time, because as you say, it's very new, isn't it? All about adoption.
Yeah, it does take the guesswork out of some of the stuff that one would pour over and spend a little time on, right? But that also means that there's a possibility that you lose those skills as human beings over time, right? So that's the that's a double-edged sword. You don't want to lose that ability as humans to be able to do those tasks yourself, but also at the same time be smart and adopt it. It's like going from using brooms to sweep your room to using vacuum cleaners to robotic vacuum cleaners, right? That's the there are certain things you do and certain you don't, but you never lose the ability to sweep the floor, right?
So one of the things that I wanted to cover off, because it probably ties in quite well with where you're at, because obviously I know you're looking for your next executive level position, is the whole topic around talent pools and hybrid working and remote working. We've noticed a big shift towards a hybrid working model. People want to see people back in the office, in the flesh. A lot of companies feel they can get more value from seeing people face to face. A lot of companies have physical office space that they don't want sat empty, therefore completely wasting money. I get all of it. How are you finding that? And I know obviously where you live, you've got the city there, and there's quite a few companies that have Workday. But are you finding those further afield opportunities are now shut off to you because they want people on site 3 days a week, or what are you seeing where you are?
It's a mixed bag, Nick. I mean, this is a hot topic in the talent acquisition world, as you said, and also with hiring managers. It just comes down to the comfort level of the hiring manager, right? End of day, that's really what's always been the case. I actually implemented a flexible working arrangement program back in the 2005-2007 timeframe, when long time before any of the pandemic related work from home happened.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So the objective was attract good talent, retain good talent, and not give them up to competitors. End of day. I worked for a large global organization that was losing some of their key talent to another organization in a nearby city, where that organization allowed flexible remote work, telecommuting, etc. And we put together this program globally. It worked. It was a huge success. There were a lot of people that adopted that, and hiring managers were happy because they didn't lose people. HR was happier because our retention rate shot up. As a result, we could compete really strongly with other companies that offered the same option. And I would definitely recommend organizations not go down the strict path of saying you have to be in office. Hybrid is a great model simply because it gives you the opportunity to connect with people and be seen and known. Because end of day, you also want to be recognized as an individual who's contributing to the organization's bottom line, right? So when you're seen and heard and you're present, it does make a big difference for your own growth and for your own career prospects and for your own overall well-rounded improvement as a professional, right?
Yeah. You notice back then, so that's way before the Europe specifically. I know the US is different, but Europe was involved heavily in remote working. It really has been kickstarted because of COVID. Prior to that, it was unheard of for people to be working from home half the week or more than half the week. But when you did that back in 2007 and you implemented that, did you notice a drop in productivity, or what did you notice? What sort of trends did you see?
COVID changed that for most organizations that were very stuck in their ways about needing to be in the office. A person needs to be seen to be deemed working, right? That's not always the case. You can physically be in the office, but you can be zoning off, right? You may not work for more than 2 hours a day. Who would know? Unless productivity is tracked, activity and deliverables are tracked every day and every week and so on. You could never tell. So how do you manage that? You manage that by finding people who are responsible, finding people who are mature. I always did this, right? I always had team members that were remote, always, for the last couple of decades. Never had a problem. End of day, it's a question of trust begets trust. You trust individuals to be mature enough and adult enough to do what they are asked to do and what they've signed up to do, right? And you hold them accountable. End of day, as a manager, as a leader of an organization, it is your responsibility to hold your team members accountable for what they've signed up to do, right? And if you do that right, and if you have an adult conversation, everything works. So it comes down to that.
But then it's more about the recruiting process itself, isn't it? Right? You need to recruit the right person that's remote to ensure they're mature, responsible, and can hit their targets and their goals whilst being remote. So there is an element of, okay, well, that's your interview process. You've got to weed those people out, but you've got more chance of doing it with a much bigger candidate pool. So there are some that are just absolutely adamant that you have to be in the office 2, 3, 4 days a week. And sometimes if you're in a city that's got lots of Workday customers, let's take London, for example. I'm sat in London right now. Then it's okay. That's okay, because the talent pool is big. But if you want something very specific and it doesn't exist where you are, then you have no option. And that's when I think you need a degree of flexibility to go, okay, we need to interview people and make sure that they're going to sit and do work remotely. So yeah, it's a big bone of contention across the contract and the FTE permanent world in terms of whether they want people on site or not.
It's a supply demand thing, the city, or if you're not there. And also it's a question of, as you rightly said, getting the right people on the bus with you, right, makes the journey so much better. I'm just loosely quoting Simon Sinek there. It's about who you bring along with you on the journey. Get the right people on board, and everything works out. If you don't have the right people, as you experience with some of your client organizations, they hired somebody and it didn't work out. So that's such a waste. It's an opportunity loss. You don't want to be spending hiring dollars on someone that will probably not work out 6 months down the line.
Yeah, exactly that. And if now you can look to your local talent pool, look to people that can commute into your office, and you might find someone good, right? But what happens if you can find someone 10 times better that can't commute in? Can that person that is 10 times better but can't commute into the office every single day, is he going to add more value to your deployment or your post go live environment than that person that can make it in and you get some face time with? Well, yeah, of course, right? So why would you say just cut yourself off and say no to that? Right? That person there could save your company money by not making the same errors that you hire someone locally that might not be as good, and you're fixing stuff 6-12 months down the line.
Related to that very thought is the idea of allocating a set amount or a percentage of your payroll for training, because you want, even if you do get someone that's local and that's not the higher value candidate, right, in terms of ROI, can you bring someone in that will actually become that person, become that high ROI person? Can they be trained? Can they be given the the tools and resources necessary to make it happen? If that's the case, do you have the ability to give them the tools and the resources and the training, etc.? So those are the considerations that you might want the clients to think over, because end of day, believe it or not, the time that it takes to get someone up to speed and ready and yield the same value versus hiring someone now for probably slightly higher salary and being able to get the job done right now, you will definitely see the value in hiring someone. It's like the present value of money, right? It's really that kind of a comparison that you make here. So yeah,
I think one of the things we've got to cover off before we finish up is obviously I know you quite well now. We've known each other for a couple of years, and you are looking for your next level, your next role. Yes. You're at the sort of executive strategic level. As you said, I think 12 years experience in the Workday ecosystem now. Is that 12 years? Yeah. I think that's longer than it's been around in the UK. I think the first deployment was 2011 or 2012. So come to the UK, you'll be the most experienced guy here, Anand. But
I'm happy to.
Tell us a bit about what it is you're looking for. What would be your ideal role? Where could you add most value to an organization? Whether it's a company looking at deploying Workday or a company that wants to make the most of the system that haven't optimized properly, where would you sit, and how would you add most value to one of these companies?
Sure. There are three different types of organizations that from where I stand, I can see, right? One is an organization that wants to bring Workday in, so it's a greenfield implementation for them. That's always an attractive proposition, because most organizations tend to not have that expertise within in order to be able to make certain right decisions in terms of going from a legacy solution to something like Workday. Someone like me with those years of experience that I bring can step in and say, let's not do that, let's do this, right? Very often your implementation partner tends to be staffed with people, or staffing your implementation with people that are more doers of tasks rather than true consultants who can stand up and say to the CXO team, what you're thinking about is not going to work for you. It takes a level of experience, maturity, and comfort level in those settings to be able to speak up, right? So that's one value added, right? And then the other type of organization is one, as you said, has Workday, is trying to optimize and leverage the best out of their implementation and the ROI, that they can do. So there's always value there. I can see myself coming in and making a huge difference in terms of ROI. I've done that a few times over. And the other kind of organization is one where the implementation isn't really a problem, but they're looking to see if they can consolidate multiple solutions that they have in their portfolio within the HR space. They're looking to see how to bring all the technologies together, how to bring the resources together, what strategy. It's more strategic also in that space. That is another space that does make sense for me. But that said, the industry-wise, I would love to be in a nonprofit or a green energy sector industry or high tech. Those are the three that I'm, keen on this round. So time will tell.
And obviously we've just had a big segment on hybrid working. Tell us whereabouts. Not your exact address, but tell us what city you live near, and how flexible you are about being on the client site that's not somewhere commutable, a day or so a month, or whatever it might be. What's your thoughts on that whole thing for you personally, with your personal circumstances?
Sure. Atlanta metro area is where I am, and anywhere in the metro area is fair game. Even for either a remote or hybrid or other option, even in office. But typically, what I find is that most organizations that I speak to in recent times, they've been willing to make an accommodation, even though they start off with the idea of hybrid in, let's say, somewhere in California or maybe in Chicago, whatever. They're usually willing to, once they speak with me, the recruiting team as well as the hiring managers have tended to be willing to go back and mull their options over and come back and say, you know what, flexibility with location is not a problem. If you wish to travel once a couple of months or once a quarter, that's fine, as long as you're there for key events at the venue that we have in mind. We should be fine. So most often that's the experience I've had. But there are a few that come back and say, no, this is strictly in person, and you have to be in the office 3 days a week, and in somewhere in Virginia, whatever. As someone that's a HRIS and HR operations space leader, it is important, I believe, that one gets face time with the other HR leaders, as well as the CXO team, because end of day, they are our stakeholders, partners, as well as decision-making final authority, if you will, right? So if we have to high resource demanding option that we need to make a decision on, we have to bump it up to the CXO team for them to sign off. Yeah. And unless I have a budget that covers it, I'm going to go 1 or 2 levels up. So I want to have that face time, and I think it's important for every team member to have the face time. I also believe that having worked remotely for a couple of decades on and off, I don't think that is a problem on my end. It is a question of the comfort level, as we talked earlier, right? Which organization feels comfortable about this. That's really what it'll come down to.
Yeah. Okay. All makes perfect sense, and I'm sure we'll see further movements in the whole hybrid remote thing moving forward. So thank you very much. And I'm sure you and I will speak again soon. But that's been really insightful, and I really appreciate your time.
Thank you very much, Nick. A pleasure meeting with you and speaking with you as always. I look forward to our next Connect time.